That's it. I think we'll get going. So firstly, thanks for joining us this morning. So today's webinar is about doing more with Microsoft 365. My name's Tom Rose, and I've got Stephen Lanfranca on the call too, our guest presenter. We're going to be going through some information about Microsoft 365 and how your organisation, or specifically non-for-profits, can be using this a little bit more. The webinar is tailored for non-for-profits. There may have been some other people jump onto this, but the information is fairly vanilla, but there are some bits that are specifically for NFPs. So I just want to point that out before we kick on. So a little bit about myself. I've been in IT for 20 years. Working with managed service providers, but also on internal roles. The internal roles I worked in were in much larger businesses in the Northern Hemisphere, in London and New York. And what I've tried to do when I've returned to Australia is bring some of that knowledge and experience back to Australian businesses. I think that typically Australian businesses are about 5 years behind what they're doing in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's been good to bring that experience back and really try and help Australian business. My current role is the Managing Director at Synergy, which you'll probably see that logo pop up on a few of the next slides. My guest presenter, which I just introduced before, is Stephen Lanfranca. Stephen's our technical specialist from the Microsoft team at Ticker Data. His official job title is Microsoft Technical Cloud Specialist. So Stephen, welcome. Thanks for joining the call.
Thanks for having me.
So there's Stephen is going to be assisting today. I'll often refer to him during some of the slides that are coming up, and he might be able to assist at the end if there's any questions that you might have. All right, moving on to the next slide. So this is what we're going to cover today. There's about 5 topics. We're looking initially at what are the key challenges that non-for-profits face in a hybrid work world. How does Microsoft 365 help in reducing your IT cost and complexity? How does Microsoft 365 enable secure productivity? And Microsoft 365 Copilot and how it can help your business. So this is a topic that we will pass over to Stephen for. Copilot is Microsoft's AI engine, so that might be an interesting part of this webinar as well. And then finally, we'll work on to how Synergy might be able to help your non-for-profit business. So moving on to the next slide. So firstly, what are the key challenges that non-for-profits face in a hybrid working world? So in September 2023, the Attorney General's Department released its response to the Privacy Act and Review Report, announcing some significant proposals to the data privacy laws for SMBs. Now, you might actually notice that I refer to SMBs in these slide decks a few times. We consider that most non-for-profit organisations fall into the SMB banner. So going on from that, so the proposals that have been made in this report or in this review actually are talking about removing a threshold that has protected small businesses for a number of years. There's 2.3 million businesses in Australia that will be affected by this proposed change, and currently the federal government are working with key industry stakeholders on getting advice on writing this new legislation. And what this will mean for most of these 2.3 million businesses is that you must lock down any personally identifiable information that you collect. So that can include all types of things like driver's licenses, identifiable information, email addresses, people's home addresses, tax file numbers is a big one as well. And then the other big thing too is if this data is breached, then you're going to be legally required to notify the affected parties. This can cause all kinds of trouble for any organization needing to notify your customers or potentially the people that you work with regularly that there's been a data breach in your organization. So there's some brand damage that can cause a lot of problem for a non-for-profit business. So the proposed changes will be strengthening existing security and data destruction obligations. This is something that's really already been done right across the world, and Australia is a bit of a latecomer to the party. In Europe and in the UK, they have something called GDPR. GDPR works on making sure that organisations are not really storing data that they don't need anymore. And the idea around that is that you reduce if there is a breach, you reduce the amount of people that are affected by that breach. And obviously, as I've already touched on, it removes the small business exemption as well. So as it currently stands, any business that with an annual turnover of less than 3 million haven't been affected previously. But what they're now saying is that threshold is going to be removed altogether. So some pretty serious changes for every business and something that everyone needs to be aware of. So when we think about this topic, what should be top of mind for the customers that we speak to, there's a few key points here, right? So on this slide, one of the first things that you should be considering is how do you meet employee needs for remote flexibility and in-person collaboration. So we know that 22% of SMB employees work remotely. On to the second point, how do you enable seamless work from anywhere? We know that 85% of leaders surveyed say they shift to hybrid work. The shift to hybrid work has made it challenging to have confidence that employees are being productive. So we hear that a lot, and that just doesn't affect SMBs or non-for-profits. But how do you know that in this hybrid work world that your workers are working well in the office, but also at home remotely as well? The third point, how are you keeping data secure? So we know that 64% of small businesses allow employees to access work data on personal phones and computers. So it's not uncommon for there to be a mix of corporate devices and also bring your own devices. I'm sure, Stephen, you've seen that during your career as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's really prevalent where I think a lot of people are just opening up the ability to have phones and stuff like that, but it's their personal phone, and that's where it becomes a bit of a problem. That's very common.
Yeah, exactly right. So what we normally see is the laptop devices are normally very corporate, but then it's the mobile phones that are often the BYOD devices. I think you need to be considerate on how that deployment works in any business, but normally you want to make sure you've got certain security frameworks around those. Bring your own devices to make sure that your company data is protected. Well, let's move on to our next. So one of the security should be top of mind for every business. It doesn't matter what size you are. Some of the stats that you're seeing on this page are actually published by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. For those of you who are a bit unaware, the Australian Cybersecurity is a department run by the Australian Signal Directorate. What you'll see here are some stats that are very important. They're a bit alarming as well. We know that these are numbers from 2023 published in November. That there's an attack every 10 minutes reported, which basically equates to 144 reports a day. So quite significant. We know that over 60% of small businesses that incur a cyber attack don't actually survive because of the impact that attack actually has on the business, with an average cost of about $46,000 for every small business that is affected by some type of cybersecurity or breach. So unfortunately, we have seen this occur from time to time, and it's typically happened with those businesses that are a bit lax with their security and the way that they've implemented it. Some people have a mindset of, well, it hasn't happened to me yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. I think that's probably the wrong approach. we recommend that you put some emphasis around how you're securing your IT and also the data that your company uses. I mean, Stephen, have you come across this yourself during your time in the industry?
Yeah, and I smiled there because it won't happen to me. A lot of people also say, oh well, we're too small.
Yeah.
They won't come after us. We're too small. And a common thing there is there's no such thing as too small. People get breached individually. Um, Also, it may not be targeted. It may just be a spray attack, and your organization accidentally gets caught in a wider dragnet. Um, you know, People also think security is a pain. It's, oh, I can't be bothered having MFA on, so let's not have it on. And lo and behold, breaches occur that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, the it won't happen to me. We're too small. Those type of mindsets, I think, are they were never good, but I think they're very much dated now, and I don't think it's going to be an excuse that you can really get away with.
Look, yeah, I completely agree. They are outdated, those type of views, and it is unfortunate that they are still out there. Commonly, we get told that security is too complicated and that we don't need to do this. Those are often the companies that are susceptible to those type of attacks. And the cost for us, for a business like ours, to come in and do the remediation work, it's more than it's generally about 3 times what it would have cost to implement the security in the first place. If that gives people a bit of a guide around what has to happen when that type of scenario does occur. On to the next slide. So, well, on this side, we briefly touch on AI, which is going to become more important as the years go on, and Stephen's going to go into depth about later on. But these are some interesting stats that we thought we'd touch on just before we do start going down that path. So we know that 64% of people are struggling to find, the time and energy to get their work done. Um, since 2020, the usage of Teams has increased by about 3 times. So that's quite significant, that increase. And we know that 70% of people would delegate tasks to AI to help reduce their workload, to actually allow them to free up some time during the day. So they're just some initial stats that we thought we'd raise before we go on to the next slides. That'll include some information about AI. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. So these slides. So what we're talking about here, when at the back end of November 22, when we saw some of the bigger businesses out there being attacked and there being certain cyber breaches, is that we sat down, and what Synergy did is we developed 5 key questions with a checklist for each question. And these are questions that your business should be asking about the use of data. So if we start from left to right, I'm going to kind of touch on every question. I probably won't read through every checklist item, and this is something that we're happy to circulate. It's also available on our website if you wanted to go and have a look at it. But it's definitely something that you could use to be asking your business about the use of data. So from left to right, does your business collect any sensitive customer data? So I did speak about this before. So it's kind of understanding the data your business holds and your responsibilities to protect it. Identify where the important data is stored. So is the data stored in a CRM system? Is it sitting in a SharePoint site, a Dropbox file, a Google Drive, any of those type of locations, or is it on some kind of old NAS drive that sits in the office that's completely unprotected? Only collect the data that you really need. I think this is a significant point. There's no point in having data that you don't need anymore. Long gone are the days of just grabbing everything and only using 10% of it, because when we see these data breaches occur, it's typically the data that you didn't really need to keep that is the most significant. And then one important thing there you can see is keeping your devices and software up to date. So this is something that we recommend for every business. What do you think, Stephen? Well, I mean, would you agree with all of that?
Yeah, look, I was smiling and nodding along. I just think of so many organizations that, like you said, they just collect everything and then actually only need maybe to verify some ID, but they don't just collect, they keep that data. which is, I also think, even just from a personal perspective, I haven't been with a certain company for who knows how long, 5, 10+ years. I haven't done any personal dealings with them, but they've kept my data. And then when they get breached, I get dragged up in that. So, yeah, it's quite frustrating, even just as an end user, before even thinking about the business consequences.
Yeah, and I think thinking back to that end of 2022, I think one of the biggest breaches incurred about 11 million Australians. So it's quite significant, and you can't say that 11 million Australians that the company needed to keep all of that data there.
No, they didn't have. There's no way they had
No,
11 million active customers. That
yeah.
that that's it, right? Like, it's just disappointing. Really,
It,
it's just disappointing.
Very disappointing. So we'll go on to our next question. Where do you conduct your business? So this is an important one as well. So things to think about is set up security software to complete regular scans on all devices. This is an absolute must. Every organization should be doing scans across its data to make sure that it is not vulnerable or it hasn't been infected by anything like viruses or even ransomware. Ransomware is one thing that we are seeing an increase of, especially in the small business world. And then securing your devices, including those used by home staff, block malicious websites. Content filtering is a major one. So one of the things that we always recommend now is making sure that you've got some form of content filtering enabled, not only on work devices, but even bring your own device, BYOD devices. And what that stops things from, there's certain type of things that stops from happening is if someone accidentally goes to a malicious website, it'll actually stop the access to that website straight away. So it really prevents anything from nasty from happening. The third question there that you can see is, do you trust your employees' awareness and knowledge around cybersecurity? So we commonly refer to this as the human layer, and it's probably one of the most important. And it's making sure that your employees are aware of the threats and the vulnerabilities that are out there. And there's a whole raft of training that's available through a number of different training organizations. There's 20-minute kind of online webinars that you can do and take your staff through it. I think personally, from my point of view, if I have employees doing that type of training, you want to make it very short and sharp so that their minds aren't kind of drifting off. I think 20 minutes max, but 15 minutes is perfect. I mean, what do you think about that, Stephen?
Absolutely. Again, I think just even not even from a professional, just personal experience. I've worked at organizations that where you've got to do those user security awareness trainings.
Yeah,
And if you can't have it as a on-demand type thing, absolutely 15 minutes at a max is otherwise you're going to lose interest. Even think about it
yeah.
yourself. It can be a bit much. And I enjoy security, and it still can be a bit much.
Yeah, look, and that's right. And everyone's day is pretty important. So I think those on-demand kind of training modules are good because people can tap in and tap out when they want. And if you can't cover it all in a 15, 20-minute chunk, is that break it up into chunks that people can break down in over a week or over 2 weeks, but set some type of goal or limit on when that training needs to be done. Because the last thing is that you don't want someone doing the training in January and it's still not finished in December of the same year because they've not really got any benefit of it at all. On to the next slide. So, yeah, our last two questions, what would a cyber breach or cybersecurity incident cost your business? So this is something that every business owner, business leader should be asking, and if they're not already. And you need to consider how that cyber event would actually affect your business. And there's all types of things which we've already kind of covered on, like the brand and brand damage. What would the cost be to remediate the attack? How do you need to notify your clients? All of that type of typical stuff there. And then finally, what existing practices and IT solutions do you have in place? So look, this is a big one. We often find when we speak to businesses that they don't have anything in place. If that's the answer to the question, then you need to speak to someone about getting some IT security in place. I mean, I'm sure you agree with that, Stephen, as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. So we're going to hit our next slide. So, the next slides we're going to touch on how Microsoft 365 can help in reducing IT cost and complexity. So some of the benefits of the Microsoft solution you can see there. From an all-in-one place point of view, it enables people-led transformation with some real great collaboration tools. So those collaboration tools include things like OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. Also, you can safeguard your business with some of the anti-threat protection features that are included in the Microsoft 365 stack. You can also help reduce your costs. So instead of having multiple solutions, so Dropbox, a different antivirus, another product for email, you can actually combine it all into the one product. So it's, as we call in the business, one throat to choke. On the right-hand side there, we talk about market trends. So Microsoft are always up to date with focusing on digital strategies. Security is top of mind for Microsoft and any business out there at the moment. It's in the IT world, and there's some financial stability around the product suite as well. Anything you'd add on that, Stephen? I think that's a pretty broad slide there, but I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more detail in the coming slides.
That's it. Yeah, that whole the consolidation to save costs, I think, is the key thing to focus on there.
Yeah, I agree. So this slide is a little bit more of what is Microsoft. So what is Microsoft 365? And I think you can, it's summarized there quite well. So Microsoft 365 is a secure, cost-effective and reliable cloud solution for real-time collaboration and secure work from virtually anywhere. So as everyone would know, or if you don't know, Microsoft Teams is part of this stack. Also cloud storage, which I just touched on, OneDrive and the SharePoint, and the familiar Office applications that everyone's probably used for a long time now, and that's Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel. There's quite all of those applications that are included in the Microsoft 365 technical stack. On to our next slide, Microsoft 365 Premium for more secure productivity. So Microsoft 365 has many license options. At Synergy, we recommend the use of Microsoft 365 Premium because it includes all the features and securities that businesses can really leverage. There are certain requirements for a little bit of a side note here. There are certain requirements for NFPs to meet to obtain the benefits of Microsoft 365 licensing and cost-effective pricing. The pricing for NFPs is heavily discounted by Microsoft, which is a great thing. There are some thresholds and bits and pieces that you need to meet to be able to get that discounted pricing, but at Synergy, we're familiar with the process, and we work with people like Stephen to kind of walk you through it so you can really achieve that cost saving exercise. Is there anything you'd add there, Stephen, on that just before we start going through?
No, I think what I'll add is probably what you're about to touch on. So I'll let you do that first.
All right, cool. So look, the 365 business premium license, it's comprehensive and easy to use. So we find that there's all of the Office applications, the security features are all things that businesses can enable and make use of straight out of the box. There's also some other bits and pieces tweaking that we do, but it allows you to reduce costs. And when we say reduce costs, it's reducing the amount of subscriptions that you see businesses and organizations have. So often we'll go in and there's a Zoom subscription, there's a Dropbox subscription, there's a Google Workplace subscription. And what happens there is you end up paying for a number of subscriptions that you can really consolidate into one and reduce your costs, which is always an immediate saving for any organization. And then the best thing about Microsoft 365 it is enterprise grade technology. So this is being used right from small business up into enterprise and governments and big corporates. So everyone can leverage that and really make use of the great technology. So one of the things I'll touch on here, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, is included in the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license is Microsoft Defender. And Microsoft Defender is Microsoft's version of antivirus. And we've seen this come online more and more in probably the last 12 to 18 months, where it's become an offering it's been made available in the Microsoft Business Premium license. So a lot of our clients and the businesses that we work with have been able to make a cost reduction straight away by reducing their antivirus subscription and using Microsoft Defender. So it's something that every business can kind of leverage. I mean, Stephen, have you seen a lot of businesses taking up that option?
Yeah, I think you've mentioned it a few times now, excuse me, that consolidation piece. And in the NFP space, there's, as an NFP, you get such a significant discount by leveraging stuff like Business Premium. You leverage the license that's like Business Premium to make sure you get all the other outcomes there. So your Defender for Endpoint, like you've touched on, your next generation antivirus there, and also the mail filtering solution, which also covers Teams and OneDrive and SharePoint. You're getting such a wide, broader, integrated level of protection that you just don't get with those individual point solutions, but also just the cost effectiveness on top.
Yeah.
It's a real no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, and look, and the other thing that I really like about Microsoft Defender is its integration with the whole product or the technical stack, right? So there is a dedicated portal which will actually talk to devices that are, enabled in your tenant, as we call it, or organization, and it will talk about vulnerabilities or missing updates or patches that need to be deployed. And so it really gives you a bird's eye view over the organization and allows you to address areas that need fixing or need certain things done before they do become a problem. All right, on to the next slide. So this is where I'm actually going to pass over to Stephen now, and it's going to be more on the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So over to you, Stephen. I'll let you pick up from here.
Thanks. So I just wanted to give a bit of an overview, or even maybe an introduction to for some people into the Copilot offering. Copilot being, Microsoft 365 Copilot being Microsoft's new AI product that has been recently widely released. It has the ability to integrate with your entire Microsoft 365 suite, unlike other AI offerings. The reason I wanted to talk about it today is it's not just something that can be used by certain people. It's empowering and really uplifting the ability for your staff and improving their productivity. As it mentions there, Microsoft is saying it transforms the way users work. It really gives them and empowers your users to improve their productivity, give them that more powerful tools. While there may be other products out in the market that may be cheaper or free, the benefit of Copilot is that it works within your environment. So you need to focus and really take into consideration two key parts of that. One, security. When you're using other tools that may be available online, where is that data going? Where does it live? But two, what it says there on that third point, the integration with your existing environment. So as you are already using, your Word and your PowerPoint and all your other data that lives within your environment, Microsoft 365 Copilot has the ability to leverage that data and make sure that it stays within your tenant. So your staff can use that information, use the power of AI, and have in a secure manner. So I won't go too much into these use cases. This is where I just want to put this out there to maybe get you thinking a different way about it, but please reach out to the team at Synergy, who will be able to provide you with these demos, show you some little snippets of how it works in the real world and how it works within the demo environment. And just to get you thinking though about some of the ways that potentially you yourself or some of your team members may be able to benefit from it. As it says here, you can use it to create drafts based off other information you have within your environment. So one example Microsoft likes using, which applies for a couple of these, is you might have a folder with a particular client data or a folder with some 10, 15 documents about a particular topic. you want it summarized for a 1-page document, or you want to make it into a 5-page PowerPoint presentation, you can use Copilot to at least start that process. It's not here to do your job. It's not here to just do it all. The point that Microsoft keep underscoring is it's a Copilot, not an autopilot. It's here to assist you, not do the work for you. And I personally think that's really important, just to really think about as the use case and the purpose of it. But yeah, the ability for it to kick things off for you, give you a really good starting point, and maybe just assist you in getting some further information onto some from your information, is where it is really powerful. While this might look very complicated and very technical, it's just wanting to talk about the security around Copilot. I mentioned it from that first slide, but I personally believe in the coming probably 12 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot more data breaches become publicly known due to people using the free or cheap online tools that I personally used. I know my wife uses quite regularly as well, to do their job or assist them with tasks, and accidentally leaking data, and in turn will lead to breaches. I'm saying that with 100% confidence. It will lead to breaches. There have already been a couple of big name breaches from ChatGPT, and I believe it was, actually, I'm not going to say because I might get the company wrong, but there have been 1 or 2 very significant breaches due to people misusing or accidentally leaking data onto ChatGPT. And where Copilot, I guess, differs from that is everything you do within Copilot stays within your environment. If you are licensed for Copilot, Copilot takes the same permissions that you have. So if you have access to everything within the tenant, so does Copilot. That also can be a negative though, because if there isn't correct security within your environment and permissions haven't been set and data hasn't been correctly secured, it can lead to potential risks where Copilot might accidentally stumble onto some data that maybe that staff member shouldn't have access to. So that's just something else to consider. But most importantly, the data doesn't leave your environment.
So it's a very important thing to note there, right? So this is where Microsoft 365 are making sure that your IP is being protected. Is that one good way of kind of explaining, summarizing that?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really good.
So I'll pass back to you.
Thanks for that, Stephen. So I appreciate that. And so we're coming up to the last few slides here, and this is more about how Synergy can assist with your IT needs. So we won't go into this too much, but we wanted to kind of cover it. Basically, what we can have a conversation with Synergy about how we can come in and help your business. What we have been able to do over the last few years is we've developed some hardening techniques that every business should think about rolling out to their Microsoft 365 environment. And what that allows you to do is close any gaps that are generally a little bit open and are known to attackers. And what we do is by closing down that, we prevent any kind of cyber attack from occurring. We also can evaluate your existing, Microsoft 365 users and permissions, making sure that people don't have permissions that are unnecessary. This is often another bit of a hole that attackers will use. So they'll typically look for business leaders or even directors that have what we call a global administrator permission, and they leverage those accounts to really start the attack. I've seen that happen just this year 3 or 4 times, and last year it was in the 20s to 30s. So something for everyone to definitely be mindful of. And then also some guidance on recommended security procedures. So onboarding and offboarding staff is a big thing as well. Making sure that you've got those practices and processes in place will also help to make sure that you've got your business protected. What we're offering today is a review of your IT systems, and this is generally what we call a bit of a business IT health check. where we come in and we look at your environment. It's generally about a 4-hour exercise. 2 hours of that exercise is on site and interviewing a key stakeholder just to understand how things are set up, and asking for some read-only permissions. So we never ask for full access to the environment. It is always only read-only, and that allows us just to do some analysis and some diagnosing on how things have been set up and come back to you with a bit of an action plan. Typically, this is worth about $660 ex GST, but for anyone that wants to reach out today, we'll do that for free of charge. So look, on that kind of ends the presentation, which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to make this short and sharp today. We didn't want to go into too much detail, but what we might do is pass over to any questions and answers that people might have. I've just had a note too come through from one of my colleagues just before I finish up too. So the Microsoft 365 premium license for non-for-profits, the first 10 licenses are actually free of charge. It doesn't actually cost the organization anything. And then from a license 11 and upwards, that they are a payable license. But that payable license is, as I said before, heavily discounted. So something to think of for everyone. I'll just go across to the questions and answers and see if anyone's popping anything in. So I've got something from Zoe. I'm a little confused. The session seems to be more focused on information security. I thought we were going to go through optimizing Microsoft tools for NFP businesses. Look, sorry, Zoe, if that hasn't been clear, I do apologize. What we can do is we can reach out to you directly and try and help you with some of the questions that you might have. And let's see if there's anything more. Got a question coming in from Tyson. What are your experiences with PAM solutions? Have you got any recommendations? Well, Tyson, personally, no, I don't have a lot of experience with PAM solutions. One of my colleagues, our architect colleagues, solutions architect colleagues might have. So what I'll do is I'll get your details noted down and we'll get someone to reach out to you, and we might be able to answer some questions as well.
And I can just quickly jump in.
Yeah.
Just from a Microsoft perspective, I've assisted some organizations with the Microsoft PAM solution. There are powerful tools in that space. So yeah, as Tom said, the Synergy guys will be best positioned to help you out there, but there is Microsoft functionality in that space to leverage your Enter ID account within there. So it feels a bit clunky. Okay, well, look, reach out to the Synergy guys. We can book a call and figure out if there's any specific issues and help you out along that journey.
Okay, perfect. I'm just looking to see if there's any more other questions. And what we might do is wrap things up. On a final note, if you do want a copy of this presentation, we can circulate that as well. Just please reach out to Synergy and we can get that sorted out for you as well. Doesn't look like there's any other questions coming through. So, look, guys, we'll finish there. And I appreciate everyone's time today. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.